with Dave and I present, we'll get underway. I'm going to read the opening language and then we'll do a roll call and open the meeting. So, pursuant to Governor Baker's March 12th, 2020 order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law, GL Chapter 30A, subsection 18, and the Governor's March 15th, 2020 order imposing strict limitations on the number of people that may gather in one place, this meeting of the East Hampton Board of Public Works will be conducted via remote participation. Michelle, could we have a roll call?
Sure. Thomas Mulsbury.
Present.
David Fagnan.
Present.
All right, I will make a motion to call the meeting to order. Motion to open the Board of Public Works meeting for April 7th at 5:02 p.m. via remote participation.
Dave, you have to second it.
Yep. Michelle, can we have a roll call for that?
Yep. Thomas Mulsbury.
Yes.
David Fagnan.
Yes.
All in favor, motion carries.
First item on our agenda is public speak. It does not appear we have anyone from the public joining us. If anyone who is joining us would like to speak on something other than what's on the agenda, you can do so now. All right. No public speak this evening. Second item on our agenda is mayor speak. We don't believe the mayor will be joining us this evening, so we will move on to item number 3. Approval of the March 17th, 2021 meeting minutes. Dave, did you get a chance to review what Michelle sent out?
Yes, I did, Thomas.
Any issues with as they were received?
I did not have any.
All right, then I'll make a motion to approve the March 17th, 2021 minutes, I'm sorry.
I will second that motion.
Thomas Mulsbury.
Yes.
David Fagnan.
Yes.
All in favor, motion carries.
All right. Item number 4 is an update on the stormwater regulation changes as presented by Ty and Bond. Tracy, would you like to introduce yourself to the board? Sure.
I'm Tracy Adamski. I'm Vice President and Planner here at Ty and Bond. I've been working with the city for a number of years now on stormwater management. We were able to fulfill a lot of the initial MS4 requirements as we were going through the IWRMP. And, but there's additional requirements forthcoming. So today I have a presentation to talk about where the city stands. So it's this will also serve as part of the public process for the MS4 permit. We can talk about that as I go into the presentation, but there's an opportunity for people to learn more about the stormwater management program that's being undertaken by the city. So I have a presentation that kind of goes into the MS4 program, the stormwater management plan, and some of the items that the city is doing for permit year 3 and a look ahead to permit year 4. And then that includes a discussion on the bylaw or the ordinance changes that are required by the new MS4 permit. So if you don't mind, I'll share my screen and we'll roll the presentation.
Yep, I believe I just enabled you to have that access, so you should be able to share screen now.
Thank you. All right. So again, as I mentioned, today is to talk a bit about what we've done in year 2, what's going on in permit year 3, and what we anticipate happening in permit year 4. Get your feedback, answer questions that you might have on this permit program, and talk about the ordinance changes as well. So kind of always start back at the basics on what is stormwater and why do we care. So obviously stormwater is what happens when we get rain or snow melt that runs across impervious surfaces and lawns. That includes parking lots and sidewalks, but it also has the potential to pick up pollutants. So there have been a lot of studies that have correlated an increase in pervious surface with a decrease in water quality. And that's why EPA has taken a harder look at what we call non-point source pollution. So pollution that comes from stormwater runoff, because some stormwater runoff can carry trash, it can carry oil, it can carry nutrients, sediments and bacteria. So, the MS4 program kind of tries to take a look at, how can we address the stormwater pollution at its source. For Easthampton, you've been brought into the EPA's MS4 program. So the MS4 stands for Municipal Separate Storm Sewer System. It's a permit that's currently jointly administered by EPA and Mass DEP, and it affects the urbanized areas within a community. And this map down here shows in the red hatching what's considered urbanized in Easthampton. So for you guys, it's really the majority of the city. And EPA wants you to look at 6 minimum control measures. So they include the public education and outreach and getting the public involved in participating in stormwater issues. The big ticket item is really this illicit discharge detection and elimination. So identifying what is coming into your system that shouldn't be and looking for opportunities to remove them. The bylaws or the ordinance changes that we're going to talk about are going to be focused on the construction site runoff and the stormwater management and new development. And we'll get into those in a little bit. And then item 6 is EPA essentially saying to the city, establish some best management practices so that your activities are not impacting stormwater pollution. So, it covers things from lawn care, field care to vehicle management and care and making sure that, spills are cleaned up and things like that so that we're not causing potential sources of stormwater pollution. And then you're also subject to TMDLs, which are total maximum daily loads. This is EPA's, goes through a study and identifies what limiting pollutant is in a given water body and, how much of that pollutant can that water body and its ecosystem absorb. And so through the TMDL, they identify areas where reductions in pollution ought to take place. We're in the Connecticut River Valley, so we're all subject to, all the Connecticut River communities are subject to the Long Island Sound TMDL for nitrogen removal. So you'll see there's some special requirements that Easthampton's subject to because of that. Nashawannuk Pond has a phosphorus impairment, and then both the Manhan River and the Connecticut River have E. coli. So there's a few different requirements that are including additional public outreach that are required because of those impairments. So Easthampton is covered. You submitted your notice of intent back in 2018 and received your authorization from EPA in March of 2019. And every September, you're required to submit an annual report. I think Dan's usually pulling that together, identifying what was done in the prior year, and actually a look ahead for the upcoming year to identify how you're complying with the permit requirements. And the stormwater management plan was finalized back in July of 2019. That being said, it's considered a living document. So as additional mapping happens, as if new outfalls are identified, new developments go in that have new infrastructure, the maps that are associated with the stormwater management should be updated. Any new best management practices or new issues related to water quality should be updated. So it should be considered a living report. So, you know, as new information is identified, that kind of gets pulled into the stormwater management plan. And then just going to go quickly through the minimum control measures and how Easthampton is, you know, where you sit right now for addressing these. Because of the TMDLs, there's a series of annual messages that are required to educate the public. And you're members of the Connecticut River Stormwater Committee that's run through Pioneer Valley Planning Commission, and they do a lot of this for you. So you're in pretty good shape when it comes to the public education and outreach. Over the life of the permit, there's also 2 additional messages that need to be addressed to developers and industrial facilities. MCM2 is the public involvement and participation. The requirement for this is having a public meeting. So, you know, today serves as that purpose, and also making sure that the stormwater management plan is available for public comment. And you've got that posted on your website at the link here. So you're covered here. Again, the meat of the program this year, or this particular permit, is with the illicit discharge detection and elimination. So, you know, we've developed a stormwater system map. You know, this is a snapshot of it here, identifying your catch basins, your manholes, your pipes, and your outfalls. That's used to, you know, do outfall screening and dry weather sampling, which is due at the end of this permit year, which is at the end of June of this year, 2021. I know Dan and crew have been out doing the outfall screening, and I think hit about 60 out of 190 thus far. So that's actively going on.
That's right.
And with only a handful or so of those outfalls where dry weather flow has been identified. So those will need to be sampled as part of this effort. So back when the first MS4 permit came out, it required communities to establish their own bylaws and ordinances to give the cities and towns the authority to have authority over stormwater, essentially. There's a lot of parallels to these requirements to both the stormwater management standards from Mass DEP, as well as to the EPA construction general permit. But this was EPA's way of, you know, essentially pushing the review and enforcement down to the communities. So you have laws on the books. However, the new permit has some new requirements that require going back to the ordinance. And we can talk about those in a little more detail. Outside of this slide presentation, we've kind of taken a spin through your current ordinance to identify where some of those changes are. But a couple of the key things are that when it comes to the standards that the best management practices for new developments need to meet are different in the MS4 permit. So for decades, maybe, we've all been working under making sure that we can remove 80% total suspended solids from stormwater runoff for new developments. EPA has changed that. So now they're looking at making sure that the best management practice systems that are designed for new developments remove 90% TSS and 60% total phosphorus from stormwater. So this is a new requirement. at one point in time, and actually this requirement was just finalized this January. So there was a bit of back and forth between EPA and DEP on this particular issue. So even though the permit was finalized a few years back, this particular item was only finalized a couple of months ago. The other challenge, so we say, is that Mass DEP is in the process of updating their stormwater standards. And so they have not completely accepted EPA's new requirements. And it's possible that Mass DEP stormwater standards are going to change from what we have today. So, so our goal is going to be to try and modify the ordinance so that you've got some flexibility, because, once the new standards come out from Mass DEP, you still want to be referencing those as standards for performance standards for new developments. But all of this is supposed to be done by the end of June, and to have this language revised in your ordinance. And then back to good housekeeping. So there is stormwater pollution prevention plans that have been developed for the garage and transfer station location. And as part of that, there's quarterly inspections that occur. There's a series of good housekeeping standard operating procedures that were developed for a variety of municipal activities that are available and ongoing. And then there's just EPA has a pretty long laundry list these days of record keeping for the annual reporting requirements. So back to the TMDLs, because these are in addition to what you're required for the minimum control measures. For the most part, for the both the phosphorus and the nitrogen TMDL, there's enhanced public education and outreach, and that was what I was talking about with the annual messages. Typically, you would only need to do 1 or 2 messages a year. Instead, you have to do, this series of messages every year. As part of the stormwater ordinance revisions, because we have the nitrogen TMDL and there's also a impairment for phosphorus for the Nashawannuck Pond. There's some language that we've written into there that BMP should be optimized for removal of nitrogen and phosphorus as well. And again, there's some additional street sweeping requirements and a requirement to do a nitrogen source identification report for permit year 4. And in permit year 4, there's also a requirement to evaluate opportunities to retrofit stormwater best management practices on municipal properties. And because you're in the Long Island Sound nitrogen TMDL, those should look to remove nitrogen. You'll see there's a lot of parallels on the phosphorus side as on the nitrogen, similar public education and outreach requirements. And fortunately, those requirements can all be combined. So it's not like you're sending out, 6 messages. You just have to, keep the 3 that you are required to send out. Similar requirements for incorporating phosphorus removal into the stormwater ordinance. There's some additional requirements for, dealing with the grass cuttings and leaf litter that could potentially be a phosphorus source on city-owned properties. Again, similar to nitrogen, a phosphorus source identification report is due next year. And especially within the watershed of Nashawannuck Pond, the city should look at opportunities to put BMPs that address phosphorus on city-owned properties as available. So looking ahead to permit year 4, once all the dry weather screening and outfall sampling is completed, then it's time to take a step back and take a look at that information and re-rank the priority of the outfalls for going into this next phase, which is wet weather screening and sampling. So the information on the dry weather, so where there's flows from outfalls during dry weather, that's potentially a red flag that there might be something connected there. And, those, depending on what the results of the sampling are, those may become priority outfalls to take a look at as we move forward with wet weather sampling. And then there's also key junction investigations. So this is kind of looking up the system, so your outfalls may be here, but you want to look up to where multiple systems come into play so that you have a better sense of if there is an issue, where might that be coming from? So it's a way to separate out the portions of your stormwater system to identify where an issue might be coming from. And then I had mentioned this previously. So for year 4, there's a retrofit inventory that's required to look at municipal properties and identify opportunities to, install or upgrade best management practices. It could be things, as simple as a swale or a rain garden, or it could be something, more structural, depending on what's happening. Good opportunities for this are, when new developments are occurring. So I'm assuming that all the school reconstruction that is going, has been designed to meet, more stringent standards, obviously, than what had been there previously. And so those are opportunity areas for the city. And then in permit year 4, there's also a requirement to take a look at your regulations and identify if there's any impediments to developers using low impact development methods or green infrastructure. So, allowing things like country drainage, encouraging rain gardens, or pervious pavement. So an opportunity to reduce stormwater runoff or control it closer to the source. And then you're currently doing this, but it's requirement to continue tracking the site plan reviews and inspections that come through Dan's office. And this includes both projects that are under construction, so making sure that they're dealing with erosion and sediment controls for the construction process, but also to address or to make sure that once a new development is, up and running, that they are managing and doing the maintenance that they're required to do on their stormwater system so that you don't end up with problems entering into your infrastructure. So, and this is just a quick summary. Easthampton's doing a good job at meeting the MS4 requirements. The annual report is due at the end of September this year. And the big things for completion by the end of this permit year are the ordinance revisions, as well as the outfall screening and dry weather sampling. So that concludes my presentation. And I can open it up for questions. And if you want to dive into more of the details on the ordinance language changes, we can do that as well.
Thank you very much for that. Very informative. I guess the first question I have is just timing with the ordinance. You said that they're hoping to have it finalized by June. Do we just need to have them in place before you submit the September report, or is there a deadline at which the ordinances should be on paper for compliance with new projects?
So the official answer is that it should be in place by the end of June, by June 30th or July 1.
Okay.
That being said, I'll say two things. One, EPA didn't finalize, these requirements until January. So, it's put communities in a bit of a bind. They are, well, they're not saying that they're backing off on any requirements because of COVID. As you put your annual report, you can identify what are some of the hindrances, that COVID has, COVID might have restricted you from getting it done in a certain time period.
No, yeah, that was less of a concern. It was just a clarification of,
Yep.
if things aren't the final, I think you said one part of it's not expected to be finalized until June. Some of the fine requirement language.
So what's happened in an ideal world, we would have Mass DEP's stormwater standards. And
right, that's what I guess what I was referencing.
Yeah.
As one package.
At this point in time, we don't anticipate having DEP's standards finalized until the end of this year. So they're, unfortunately,
okay.
it's not going to overlap in the time frame that you have for finalizing the ordinance.
We would, in theory, we might have to revisit ordinances twice. Once for compliance with MS4 and once for DEP.
Correct. And Dan and I spoke about this earlier today. I haven't gone back to look at our revisions, but we've started to incorporate some language in other drafts, other draft ordinances, that instead of spelling out the standards, Mass DEP standards, we just reference that, you should comply with Mass DEP standards for X, Y, and Z. So instead of referencing the specific standards, which are likely to change, it makes it a little bit broader, and hopefully then you won't have to go back and redo this next year.
Okay. Dave, any other questions?
No, I don't, Thomas.
All right. Greg, this will be my first time going through an ordinance change. Is there anything that the board needs to coordinate with the city council, or is this something that just gets forwarded to the ordinance subcommittee from the DPW?
I'm going to have to look into that too, Thomas. So I'll get going on that. But I think the board will have to approve the changes to the stormwater ordinance, and then whether or not that needs to get approved by city council would be what I would have to look at, whether the board's vote and decision can be final with that, because it's not like a speed limit change or a parking thing. It's
okay. Yeah, let's just get working on procedure just so we're ahead of that, and everybody's got buy-in on the process we're going to adhere to.
Dan, do you know any more about that? Whether it would?
I think it's going to go. It goes to city council after you guys look at it and approve it. Okay. That's how it works.
Yeah,
that's my understanding as well. But the original, the ordinances that you have on the books are general ordinances. So
yeah.
I think they were, initially brought in by it might have been even town meeting at that time.
Okay. Yeah, we'll work that out. But that's on our end. That's more why I wanted to know the timeline, just so we can get everybody involved and make sure any public input we need on that process is met. All right. Is that presentation you gave us something that we can make publicly available as well, or?
Yep, I can forward it to you as a PDF, and you can.
Yeah, we might record that with the minutes and also make it available on the DPW's file system. So, along with that link you provided.
And the draft changes, right?
Yep, I can provide those as well.
All right. There's no further discussion on that. I would like to thank you all for your time on that, and we can move on to item number 6, which will be our director's report for status update.
Thank you all for the time. Take care.
Thank you very much for the information and the presentation.
Thank you.
Good night, Dan.
Thomas, I have on the agenda from the website, I do have a 5, continued discussion of FY22.
Oh, I apologize. You're correct. I jumped.
I don't want to skip. I don't think we had much to discuss there, but I don't want to skip it.
Nope. You are 100% correct. Item number 5, continued discussion of FY22 budget and rate review. David, did you have any more to input after having time to process the graphs and charts and numbers?
No, I thought, no.
Yeah.
I thought, especially with the little bonus and the water usage and everything.
Yep. Yeah, I think as of now, I'll continue with our recommendation of, just keeping it on the radar, but, doing another hard analysis after June when we have year's data, and we'll see, what the surplus usage was for the whole fiscal year and where that lines us up with retained earnings once all that's certified. So, Greg, do you have any issue with that approach, or? I think you're still moving.
Yeah, sorry, I was on mute. Yeah, I'm totally fine with that approach.
Okay. Probably by next meeting, I'll have the numbers from one more month review. So we'll sort of see if we're still trending up or if we're starting to return to normal. And then a month after that, we'll have some school, return to school usage, and we'll see if we're starting to normalize or if this is the new normal for a while. So I will continue to pull those numbers and track them.
Thomas, you kind of, when briefly during the last discussion, you talked about, and going forward, not now, more modern ways of tracking usages of everything.
I think what I meant by that was we may request some information on other sort of billing methods. Because right now we do a small flat like meter fee, and then basically everything's on consumption. I've looked into some other models where you sort of divide the hard cost of operating a wastewater treatment plant by the number of users, and that's sort of a base cost to be in, and then the usage fees are less. And I mean, not that I'm proposing that, but there are other methods of that have been successfully implemented in other places. So I just don't know.
I would definitely be interested in looking at, just other ideas.
Oh, no, not that one.
I'm totally open to looking at.
Yeah, I think the reason I had brought that up was because if and when we tackle the issue of, we just solve all the, stormwater requirements that are going to be coming, and how they potentially could be better served by having a dedicated stormwater enterprise fund that manage that. If we're developing a new pillar in the structure, is that the time to also look at how we track water and sewer, and sort of rebalance the whole system of revenue for the DPW. It just seems like it would be the time to, even if no changes were implemented and we decide that what we have is what serves a community of our size, it might be a good time just to look at other options so we're aware of them, and if one would serve us and the city residents better, I think that would be a time to implement it. So
I would be inclined as a board to look into that.
Yep.
No. Yeah.
I think that's well established, and I think we can bundle that into our education on the stormwater enterprise, both for the board and the public. These are other models, get public feedback on that and some analysis. So I fully agree with you that it's something I want to learn more about. I've looked a little on my own, but that's what we have other people to instruct us and educate us on. So
Yes. Yes.
I will-
And I'm totally interested in being in that process, Tom.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah.
And I think like the mayor had mentioned a while ago, you know, we can research, we can do, I think she called them like working groups where it's
Right.
not technically a meeting like this, it's still on the record though,
But on the record, yes.
but we can have, you know, workshop sort of sessions with, you know, education for the board and the public at once, but without the public comment and public speak sections, it would just be a working session for us. So
Great.
once we can return to normal, or if we do it in this fashion, you know,
Yeah.
I think it's something we'll get to do. I think the, you know, the surplus water usage for this fiscal year gave us a little breathing room to do this right. And I would like to make it a process. Not an arduous, not
Yes.
an arduous process, but
Yeah.
I think it gave us the breathing room from being, you know, up against a shortfall to, you know, getting a year of a breather where we can get things squared away for the future. So, yep,
Very
thank you
good.
for bringing that back to the forefront.
Yep.
All right. We conclude the discussion on item number 5. We will now move to item number 6, Director's Report. Thank you, Greg.
Yeah. Happy to report that we were able to hire a tree warden. She'll be starting with us on Monday. It's a resident in town that has some extensive experience in urban tree management, and really looking forward to getting her on board and having someone to help out with. We get a lot of requests for tree services, so determining whether a tree is a city tree or private tree, and it will be and just being able to assess the health of some of the trees we have in town. It's going to be great to have her on board with us. So
Great.
not sure if I should say her name and everything in a public meeting until she's officially an employee, which would be once her paperwork and stuff is done. But
Yeah, that is fine. You can
That's fine.
update us.
Yeah.
So glad to hear you filled one of our positions.
yes, so we are back to full DPW field staff in every division every day, so we're not staggered out anymore with the pandemic, which is very good. We got a lot of catching up to do. Highway department put down 16 tons of hot asphalt on Union Street today to get that kind of buttoned up so we can get the full project going there in the next couple of years. But they are doing what they can. They got a lot done on Park Hill Road yesterday. Did a lot of patching on Holyoke Street last week, and we're just trying to get to some of the more problem areas as fast as we can. The asphalt plant here in town's not open yet for another couple of weeks, so we do have to truck blacktop out of Springfield, so that makes it a little bit harder, but they are getting it done as much as they can. So we've got some guys doing that, and then Jim's got some of the other highway guys out sweeping. So we're kind of attacking everything from 2 fronts to get caught up. So I've been working quite a bit with the planning department, the mayor's office, and the city arts coordinator on upgrading the kind of outdoor venue, I'll call it, here at 50 Payson. There'll be some more of the dots painted in the parking lot, and Pasqualina was able to secure some grant money for that kind of stuff for everything she's doing here. So we'll be kind of lending a hand with some of that setup. So just trying to help all of the other departments and their initiatives to get through the pandemic. I had some staff at the high school today helping relocate the outdoor classroom tents and the blocks we used to hold them down. So we're just kind of doing what we can to help all the other city departments. I'll be meeting a representative from U.S. Fish and Wildlife at the fish ladder on Friday, and we're going to get that look at getting that up and running while we can still help some of the certain species of fish get up the river. So I'm looking forward to learning how to do that and getting the help from them. So hopefully we can get the camera up and working. And we didn't activate it at all last year with the pandemic. So hopefully we can get everything working and the fish ladder functioning. And maybe we'll have some pictures in a couple weeks. So
Greg, just for public knowledge, where is the fish ladder located? On what water body?
the Manhattan River, Northampton Street, and the area of Mill Street. So it will be a different thing for DPW to be involved in a little bit.
Right.
Not every DPW gets to operate a fish ladder, so we'll give it a shot. So and that's basically kind of what I have for this meeting.
No, that's great. Good spring work.
Yep.
Weather broke, full crew back.
Yeah, that's one thing that's kind of hard. The weather broke early, and it seems like some expectations are that we can have so much more work done, but it's like the asphalt plant's not even open in town yet. You know, it's it.
Right.
Yeah.
It's only
just because I've seen some comments about it online. What's the timeline for like crosswalk restriping and that type of work?
Well, once we're done sweeping and patching, that way, if the patches are in the crosswalks, we usually start doing that around end of May to June.
Okay. Yeah, just for public knowledge as to what the timeline.
I've noticed several that we do need to get to sooner than later, but so maybe we'll try to squeeze some of them in the higher traffic areas. But it's really getting the sweeping done and then patching and sweeping.
Yeah, no sense in painting over grit. So that defeats the purpose.
Yeah.
Greg, is there any timeline on the roundabout at Park and South Street?
Park and South.
The one by the new school or the new old school?
No, I can get an update on that for you, Dave, but that is really has been the MSBA, the Mass School Building Authority, and the school departments project.
Yeah.
DPW, we were involved mostly with, Dan and Diane were involved in it in the planning kind of stages and with the utility connections for the new school. But as far as that roundabout coming in, being put into service, I'll say, is I've gotten kind of been told different things on it, and I can look into it and get you where it's at now. I just don't want to tell you something that's not right. So I can check with.
Yeah, just on general, I get some questions about it. Nothing to put a lot of effort in, Greg.
Yep.
Especially since it doesn't really.
Exactly where it's at now. I've just been told.
It's not under our jurisdiction per se, so.
Yeah, and it's been. Yeah. I've been told different things about why it's not in service, and I would want to get you a fresh answer.
Okay. Great. Mm-hmm.
All right. If that is all, thank everyone for your time this evening. It was all very informative and good discussion. I will make a motion to adjourn this evening's meeting.
And I will second that.
Thomas Mulsberry,
Yes.
David Fagnan,
Yes.
all in favor, motion carries. Next meeting's April 21st.
All right. We'll see you then.
Great.
Thanks, everyone.
Have a nice
Good
evening.
night.
Yeah. Good night.